I'm going to talk about generative AI and how to integrate generative AI, including the use of vector databases, graph databases, tying into LLMs, how to integrate that back into traditional software stacks to make the product more useful, what I've done, what's working, where our challenges have been. Traditional AI, of course, there's still a place for doing things like predictions and regression analysis and cluster analysis and those kinds of things, and creating those kinds of assets that can go along with new generative AI capabilities. Hi there. My name is John Williamson. I have been a strategic system designer for 21 years, as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, even as an employee. I built a number of systems across a number of different industries, all web based applications, multi party workflow using whatever the most advanced technology was at the time. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned a lot of lessons. I want to share some of those lessons with you. So, who is this for? I've been a number of roles in my life. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, ever since I was mowing lawns for my neighbors as a kid. And then throughout every application I've developed, even when I was consulting, I was looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective, or even as an employee, building new products to be marketed, thinking like an entrepreneur from the ground up. I've always been a product guy. So I'm not an under the hood kind of code builder, writer, anything like that. I'm the kind of person who thinks about who's going to use the product, how are they going to use it, what can I do to optimize that, how does that work to support the business, and so on. But at the end of the day, I started my university education as an engineer, although I didn't finish that way. And I don't write code, but I love working with engineers. I love to bring a more technical mindset to the product and entrepreneurial role, leveraging engineering talent and identifying engineering talent and capabilities to build more. I consider this the sweet spot in the middle. So if you're any of these three, or maybe a combination, or have interest, hopefully what I present will help you a little bit. I'm going to share everything I know about the projects that I've built, and maybe you can learn something along the way. That's going to include things like customer financing, how to use your customers to finance your project, and how not to do it and how to do it. I've made some mistakes, maybe gotten a little too close, a little too soon, maybe allowing the customer to drive the product a little more than I should. I'm going to tell you what I've done and what I've learned along the way. I'm also going to tell you things about product scope. So sometimes I've had product scope that's far too large, or listen to a customer's product scope that was far too small. So there are balances to be created, and those things can work alongside the product development and entrepreneurial life cycle, and can be organized in a way to create milestones that matter. I'm going to talk about multi-party workflow. So oftentimes your customers aren't going to all be in your software all the time. So how do you get multiple parties to work together in a coordinated fashion, sometimes on different channels, meaning not all logged in? I'm going to talk about building freelance teams. So how to augment whatever team you might already have with an expanded set of talent and resources, and how to integrate those people so that they can work together in a very productive way. I'm going to talk about generative AI and how to integrate generative AI, including the use of vector databases, graph databases, tying into LLMs, how to integrate that back into traditional software stacks to make the product more useful, what I've done, what's working, where our challenges have been. Traditional AI, of course, there's still a place for doing things like predictions and regression analysis and cluster analysis and those kinds of things, and creating those kinds of assets that can go along with new generative AI capabilities. I'm going to talk about multi-stakeholder design. So oftentimes folks get very focused in on one type of user, when in reality, there's an executive, there's a manager, there's an end-level user, and there might be a third-party consumer of just reading content at the end of the day. We're going to talk about designing for these multiple stakeholders, and what I've done and what's worked and what hasn't worked. RPA automation. So using bots and integrating RPA into software applications, it's something I've spent a lot of time doing, and I want to continue focusing on and telling you what I've learned along the way, and again, what to do and what not to do. Integrating analytics. So a lot of software ultimately boils down to screens presenting information and collecting information. And where do analytics fit in, and how do you bake them into the core software stack? I'm going to tell you about how I've done it wrong and some resolutions on how to do it right. I'm going to talk to you about how I've used configuration-led design, because you don't always know what's going to work right out of the gate, and you need the ability to customize the solution for different customer segments along the way. I'm going to talk about financing options. So, as an entrepreneur living in the Midwest, we're not Silicon Valley. I can't raise multiple millions of dollars right out of the gate on the back of a napkin. I'm going to tell you about some financing options and the impact of those decisions down the road and some important mistakes I've made. And finally, iterative planning. You don't know what you don't know yet, so you need to know that you don't know that in the beginning. We're going to talk about all these things through the lens of projects that I've built and some work that I'm doing right now. I'm looking forward to it.